So the world's underbelly, Freemasonry. So I'd say most of us here probably know what, to some degree, the Freemasons are. But what exactly are the Freemasons? What do they do? What are their ideals? And what does it mean to be even involved with them? So, Andrea, if you're not still cooking, would you like to read an excerpt from the book? Because I feel like that would describe it better than anything that I could come up with off cuff.
While she's doing that, I can give my personal anecdotal experience.
Go for it.
Um, so obviously, we all know there's different levels, different, I guess, levels of secrecy to the Freemasonry. Different lodges, beliefs and sects, and then there's a lot of mystery that goes on into when you become a 33rd degree Mason, and so on and so forth. Um, but um, Freemasonry in the public's eye, I think, what is it? You know, because you can go down, anyone here, you, me, the listener can go down the road to their local Freemasonry lodge, say, hey, I want to become a Freemason. And they'll welcome you in. Oh, yes, come on in. And they'll give you a tour, and they'll let you try out a few meetings. And then if they like you, you like them, you pay a fee, $400,000 a month or whatever it is, 150 a month. And now you're in the Freemasonry club. There are things that come with that, and there's a couple of rituals that go into that. Um, but on a very, very basic level, anyone can become a Freemason. From my anecdotal experience, with talking to Masons, this is what I experienced it to be as a low-level Freemason. Um, Essentially, uh, one of the benefits of being a Freemason is you're welcomed into a sort of brotherhood, so to speak. There is this level of favoritism that goes around, and when I say favoritism, I don't mean favorites, but favors. And so you can use your Freemasonry brotherhood as a leverage, right? So if you call the card of a brotherhood, that person, as long as it's like, no, this is on the low level, keep in mind, as long as it's like a good thing, a positive thing, that person has to help you. It has to lend out a hand, right? Say if you need a job and you see someone else who is also a Mason, you can, you know, I don't know what their signs are or anything, but you essentially let them know you're also a Mason, right? Whether it's through a Freemason pin or some sort of handshake or whatever. I wasn't read into it that kind of detail, but essentially that person would be almost borderline forced by code, by creed, by swearing to help you. All right. So there are, on the surface level, it is painted as a very good thing. As Dylan had mentioned in a lot of his videos, Freemasonry on the basic level, they worship God. They see through the eye the paradigm of the Christian church, of Jesus Christ and God and that lens and everything. So they do paint their system in a kind of Christian way. But that's where it gets a little twisty, a little different, because Freemasons, as we all know, and if you study the history of different secret societies and lodges, Freemasonry wasn't as popular as it was and wide ranging as it is today. You have a lot of different uh, lodges that kind of were their own thing, and Freemasonry just kind of like ate them up into a conglomerate. But before I had that ADHD break, where was I going? Ah, yes. So with the religion aspect, um, yeah, uh, it can be painted as a very good thing. But as we know, uh, they use occult practices, right? So when you get into now, occult doesn't mean good or bad; it just means hidden. Um, but when we get into specifics here, they'll use different, you could say magic or different practices that they use throughout rituals. Ritual is a better word for it. They use different rituals, right? And these rituals can be used for manifestation, whether it's numbers, and so you adhere to a number system, and synchronicity that increases your law of attraction and manifestation, whatever it is that you so desire to bring into the world, for yourself or for others. They can um, use a number of different methods. You know, they do have seances, rituals, all that kind of stuff that they use for tradition, that can help with that. Um, but I digress, you know. I do feel like, oh, I don't feel like, but we have seen there is a certain level of infiltration or co-optedness of the Freemasonry. And once you get to the highest levels, in kind of a cliche manner, that's when you get into things like the Illuminati, all right? And how does that tie into low-level Freemasonry? Um, from my own personal belief, I believe a lot of it's doublespeak, how the Cabal and the occult, dark occultists use their doublespeak, especially when they talk about God, their democracy. A lot of that's um, doublespeak for their own purposes, their own evilness. And so I truly think and believe that a lot of the worship of quote unquote God in the lower sects of Freemasonry has been co opted in some way or some level by the higher level dark um, Freemasonry levels. But that's my take and anecdotal experience on Freemasonry, at least on a low level.
Now, if you want to hear what this book has to say, for reference, this book is The Deep State Encyclopedia, or Encyclopedia of the Deep State, by Really Graceful. And it has a whole bunch of topics that you can imagine is on the deep state. And she has an entry on Freemasonry. And this is what it says. It says, the official narrative behind Freemasonry goes a little something like this. The local stonemason fraternities, which began to regulate the requirements for stonemasons and how they interacted with clients and authorities at the end of the 14th century, are what the fraternal organization of Freemasonry got its start. To identify members and communicate with one another, Freemasonry uses symbols and handshakes. The square and the compass, the all-seeing eye, and the letter G are some of the symbols that are frequently associated with Freemasonry. The all-seeing eye is a representation of God's eye, which is watching over and guarding the community, while the square and the compass stand for morality and ethical behavior. According to popular belief, the letter G stands for God, also known as the great architect of the universe or the maker of all things. So, yeah. It just keeps going to list off more details about their
Right.
different symbols.
Right, and we'll go more in depth as the conversation progresses. All right. So before we go on to the next question, because that was a very well-rounded answer to that, if anybody wants to share, has anybody ever seen or walked inside a Freemason lodge?
Before I speak, I want to give people a chance to approach.
I've only been in their basketball gym.
No, I have not.
I grew up in a small town, and there were other orders that fell down underneath the Freemasons. One of them was the Rainbow Girls, and we only had it was like atop of an old building that the room was wide open, and it had a chair and a couple of symbols. I don't remember, but I had been invited to be a Rainbow Girl, and I was for a while.
Interesting.
Didn't know then what I know now.
So
I think it's also important though to point out that only men can become Freemasons. Like not you, like you said earlier, that anyone, not anyone, only men. If you're a woman, I think you can become a rising star, which is, I think, the equivalent to female Freemasonry, but I can't remember if that's the right name.
So I haven't directly been in a Freemason lodge, but I've seen like if you watch YouTube, there are a bunch of different YouTubers that do things like adventuring through abandoned mansions and buildings and stuff, and every once in a while there'll be like a mansion or a hotel or something that has like a Freemason lodge inside of it. And there's kind of a theme that goes on with a lot of them. They really like their checkerboards theme going on. There's a lot of checkerboard symbolism on there. They have symbolism of day and night, and it seems like they have this like symbolism of passing through something like a rebirthing process, I guess, when they do their rituals. And it's kind of displayed in their artwork. If you look up, you could probably go on Google and look up different Freemason Lodge stuff. But there is a theme that goes on. Generally speaking, I'm not saying they all look the same. I'm sure there's a lot of differences, but the general idea, I guess, there's some similarities.
So the funny thing is growing up in Illinois, I've only ever seen one, and it was a small building tucked away, kind of in an annex above an office. It was just very much, away from everything. You'd have to look for it to know where it's at. But now, living in the South, they're fucking everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. I can't go one day without seeing a Freemason lodge or a Freemason symbol on somebody's license plate. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that's the same for me. I see stickers on people's cars, especially with the black and blue flag, which is the police flag, right? So I see that all the time, and I haven't been in a lodge, but I do see one going up to my grandparents' house in Columbus near Equestrian Place. So yeah, but I've never been in one.
I think that also might be due to the part of the Chicagoland area you're in, because in my neck of the woods, I drive past one on a very regular basis. They're everywhere. Like, there's probably like a solid like 3 or 4 within, like, I wouldn't say walking distance. It's a short walk, but like a decent walking distance. They're everywhere around here for some reason. And like I said, my brother used to play basketball in a gym that was connected to one of their lodges. It wasn't the actual lodge itself. It was just like a different floor, I guess. So.
Right. That's fascinating. Howdy, Junk. Welcome. Have you seen any Freemason lodges while living in California?
I think I told this story before at a mystery school. If not, it was just between us. But I remember scrolling through where I was working and just looking on Google Maps one day and just seeing in this private property, which was like this nice big building, just the giant G compass. And you can only see it from the aerial view, which meant it was huge. And then aside from that, just kind of relating with you guys, like there was this woman who used to park next to me in the parking lot that was like a supporter of the Masons or something. And I always wanted to catch her, and I'm like, I always wanted to have that conversation with them, but for some reason or another, that never happened. It's kind of like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen the people in the cars or if you've just seen the cars themselves, but I've been wanting to kind of get a consensus, like a demographic of what they look like, because I'm sure they just look like regular NPCs. But yeah, it's fascinating.
It is. So what is the chronological timeline of the Freemasons and how much of history has been influenced by them? So personally, I would say we can attribute the real established set of Freemasonry, I would say right around the late 1700s. I wouldn't say when the founding of America, because there were still very well established Freemason members. So it was still very prominent in France and England. So see, that one's very tricky, because really boiling it down, there's no real date that they were just like, they came together and it was like, this is the day that we founded ourselves. It all just kind of came together in an ideology, and you have rich aristocrats that love gold and love influencing people just kind of getting together. So that's a fascinating one. Now, how much of history has been influenced by them? Well, I think we can all agree that I would say pretty much all of it, because at the end of the day, it is his story, and they have won a lot of wars, not conventionally, of course, but just through bureaucratic and, slowly phasing out of ideas and ideals, and, pushing their agendas forward.
My book has a list of notable Freemasons, if you want to hear them.
Go for it.
Get back here. So the ones that are listed here, you have George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Winston Churchill, J. Edgar Hoover, John D. Rockefeller, Edgar Allan Poe, Joseph Smith, the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, which would later become the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the British monarch King Edward is that 7? I hate Roman numerals. The 7th. Swedish King Gustav III, Prussia's King Frederick the Great, Ludwig II, King of Bavaria, King of Norway, Haakon the 7th, and then Spain's King Alfonso the 13th.
So think about this. You have some of the world's most powerful people, and that's just all throughout history. Imagine what it was like being a king, and some brother who is in a far off land, isn't necessarily a king but a rich guy, and some sequence of events ended up happening, and you owe that guy. Well, that guy then later comes to you and makes a request as your brother and forces your hand to do something that you don't want to do as a king. What are you to do? You have to do it. You have to bite your lip. You have to white knuckle it. And you have to fucking do it, because that is your brotherhood. And that's powerful. That is very powerful. Xenox, do you want to add on to that or no?
Yeah, no, that was pretty well said.
Okay.
I add another name to that list.
What'd you say, Hope?
Can I add another name to that list?
Of course.
Alex Crowley,
Yeah.
who was Barbara Bush's father.
Yeah.
Was he was high level, and it seems to me that am I correct in thinking I saw something where the actor that shot the producer, Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
There was talk that part of his initiation, and I'm pretty sure that was the Freemasons, part of his initiation was to kill someone.
I wouldn't necessarily that would be a part of his initiation. I would say he was already a member. Now, this is something that it actually ties into the next question. What requirements are needed for membership, and what does it take to climb the ranks past 33? So, from what I understand, and I'm sure Andrea can corroborate this with the book, you have to do a series of tasks, and you also have to show unprecedented loyalty. And after you get to 33, you have to have a certain, I I don't want to say attitude. You have to have a certain energy field, because at that point, when you pass 33, you're at such a level that they're no longer looking at you as a human. They're looking at you as an energetic being and how you can serve them on a fundamental changing of world events level. You know, when you're past 33, you're at the pinnacle of the Freemasons, and it only goes higher than there. And I would say that Alec Baldwin thing would probably be his, you know, past 33rd step or even beyond that, in my opinion, because he's been an actor, he's been in Hollywood for a very, very long time.
Well, and the producer had connections.
Hold on. Two
to,
people talking. Andrew first, because he started first.
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Well, and the producer had connections to the Clintons, right? Like she was like the lawyer or something like that, or a witness to the Hillary Clinton, and that's why Alec Baldwin shot her.
The husband was.
Oh yeah, the husband was. Okay, so yeah, that's why it confuses me about Alec Baldwin being a Freemason or Illuminati. Like, after the Freemasons,
we're gonna
do you turn? Okay, my bad.
We're gonna get into that, because that's when things start really getting complicated. Junk, go.
So I kind of want to expand this conversation into a different area that not a lot of people address. I was made aware of this by one of my really close friends who did lots of deep research into this back in the day when the internet was still early in its infancy. It's this group of the Masons called the Boule. And if anybody knows them, basically this is basically a quote unquote on the surface on the books fraternity that's basically called Sigma Pi Phi. But when you pronounce it in their own language, it comes out as Boule. And they record it to the early 1900s. Again, dates are kind of obscure. They want you to know what you know. But essentially what this is the equalization of quote unquote human rights, but to a degree. So African Americans who are rising the ranks and becoming very notable, very prolific in the world stage were accepted into this grouping. And just a few of those, Martin Luther King, Obama, and a few celebrities that I'll mention in a moment. They were accepted into this group called the Boule, which is just an offshoot of the Skull and Bones Society. So basically what happened was the New World Order, what you have to realize is that it at a point it is a race thing, but at the same time, there's a hierarchy. If you think about the system of king, serf, servant, and below, you start to get into the idea that there is a ranking system. So with the African American community, or at least the power players in the world that were African American descent, they were only granted access to a certain degree of Freemasonry, meaning that there is a threshold of which they cannot cross. There's a limit, but they can still get pretty high up there. And if you start to think about modern day Boule members such as Jay-Z, a lot of different rappers, some African American movie stars, etc., they have to do these humiliating rituals. Yeah, no, go for it. Let's go back. You got this.
I was going to say sports players as well. Like, yeah, that, and really talking about the Boule kind of really opens up that talk that I was, more or less hinting at, which gets into the complication, which is a very fundamental fact of the Freemasons. And we have to be blunt. We have to rip off the Band-Aid. There are factions within the Freemasons. We can't sit here and say as soon as you join, you're an evil person. That's no. We're never going to say that. I'm never going to advocate for that, because on a fundamental level, it's not supposed to be evil. There was a point where everything got hijacked, and it got hijacked during the Revolutionary War when the French got involved. Because when the French got involved, there was a point to where, you know, you have the British Freemasons, you have the up-and-coming Western world Freemasons, and you have the French Freemasons. The British Freemasons were mainly, you know, this is the New World Order type. This is the type that, you know, back in that day really wanted to control the world. And, you know, we also have to understand that also during this time we have the up-and-coming Bavarian Illuminati. I don't want to say they entrenched themselves within the Freemasons up until this point. There are people out there that have said this. I don't personally buy this because, you know, really looking at it in terms of on an informational level, it would have been very hard for things and word of mouth to get out there. I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, after the war, they very rapidly started inoculating the Western world and entrenching themselves as the Bavarian Illuminati, thus taking on the Illuminati itself because it was no longer just Bavaria or Germany. So, you know, we also have the Skull and Bones Society, which is another sect within the Freemasons that isn't necessarily part of the Freemasons, but they are Freemasons. It's extremely complicated because you have the main group, but you also have subgroups that have their own, you know, personal agendas within their own bloodline and brotherhoods within themselves. And it gets so complicated, but if you just follow the tree, just imagine a massive tree, and the roots are basically the first 33 levels. The first 33 degrees are the very roots and foundations of what everything was founded upon. You kind of got to think about it like our own constitution in a way, where you have the 10 Bill of Rights, which are fundamental to our daily lives. Okay, the first 33 degrees of Freemasons is the foundation of everything. You know, that's how you come to understand what it means to be a Freemason. So that isn't inherently bad. It is not inherently bad to have a brotherhood, to have a relationship with people all across the world where you have experiences, where you're able to meet people, and, you know, you have debts that can be repaid without any I don't want to say consequences, without any emotional attachment. It is just business. You owe me, I owe you. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's very simple. And I can't knock that because it's worked for hundreds of years. So it's fascinating. But as you get deeper into it, you realize the cesspool, you realize how muddy it is, and you realize that at its fundamental level, the higher ups within Freemasonry degrees took out the whole get rid of religion, because the moment they created subgroups and started focusing on their own personal religions and their own satanic beliefs and their own ideals and what they want for the world, they led astray to the original core ideals of Freemasons. Because we also have to understand, as soon as I'm done, I'll let you talk. We have to understand that these are the people that founded our country. You know, these are people that were part of a group that were realizing, holy shit, their ideals aren't good. George Washington wasn't a saint, but he very much didn't like what the British Freemasons were up to. He wanted no part of it. He was doing his own thing. Yes, you can go into history and find him begging them for help. That was before Christmas Day. Or Christmas Eve. That was before Christmas Eve. After Christmas Eve, everything changed, and he realized he didn't need their help. He didn't even need to swing with the devil. He realized he had everything that he needed right there. So he made history at that point. It was that situation we take for granted. I know I talk about it a lot, but it's We take it for granted. The Revolutionary War was very, very, very complex. All right, go. I know somebody wanted to talk.
I just wanted to make a side note here. I do feel like definitely, you kind of mentioned it, how the different sects have their own specific religious beliefs or practices that they follow. And my personal belief is I think they have connections to different energies and different entities, particularly Dylan likes to bring up the Jesters a lot because they are a significant and high-ranking organization within the Freemasonry. But if anyone's familiar with tripping on like different kind of psychedelics, particularly DMT, there's a reoccurring and semi-common entity that one can meet in the astral realm. And a lot of people describe them as a jester, and they can be they're described as either neutral or malevolent beings, and they do have lessons to teach, but they can be very heavy because they just want to laugh kind of thing, and they'll use your kind of torture as louche for their laughter. So, but I definitely think there's a connection between that entity and, let's say, the Jester Freemasonry Society. But that's just a personal note of mine. You can disagree or agree.
Hey, Scuba, I think it's also good to lay the foundation of the connection between Freemasonry and mystery schools, because just, and I'll make this brief, but if you track back and if you're familiar with Law of One, lots of information as far as the truth was making it through in ancient Kemet. So that created the first foundation of distortion in the pharaohs, who chose to keep the secret, keep the knowledge for themselves, which then branched out into these secret societies of honest truth seekers, people who were, they had to go against the grain. They had to show that they were seeking some kind of apprentice, and that became those mystery schools. And just as you said, Scuba, they started off very peacefully, just seeking knowledge. And, you flash forward to modern day and you see that Freemasonry kicked up with that same intention. So for that reason alone, when you meet these Freemasons that are having gatherings and having brownies and lemonade, they're very, just neutral. It's more about the higher rankings who are the string pullers. And so it's fascinating because you could talk to a Freemason about all of these things that we know, especially as you're going to get into in a moment, but they'll be completely oblivious or, anything of the sort. And they'll say, no, we just meet, we hang out, I make a good brother, etc. And these people will probably never see any degree above that one. It's because they have no influence and no power. Power and influence plus money and greed equals acceptance into the higher rankings. And it's all about slavery, being indebted, blackmail, etc. And it gets really, really dark. And that's how you get mixed up into the whole satanic agenda, New World Order kind of stuff. So I think it's just important to say that mystery schools themselves aren't inherently evil. There's a positive intention to seek knowledge and come to know thyself by knowing the universe. But when you start to hoard or preserve that for a select few, then you start to polarize towards self-service, therefore harming others along the way.
So how do Freemasons choose to portray themselves through MSM, and what is their role in censorship? So I would attribute this to basically they hardly ever show themselves without their symbolism. And we'll go into their, forms of symbolism in the next question. But, just look around. You never hear anything unless you're looking for it talk about Freemasons. It'll never happen. Why is that? What's their role on censorship? They don't censor themselves at all. They just don't talk about it. It's fascinating if you really think about it. You know, there's nothing really censored. I mean, yes, there's stuff buried, of course, but as far as completely and utterly deleted, no. Definitely edited to sound different. You know, language is important. But at the end of the day, it's still there. You can still look for it. You can still find members. You can still just connect the dots and see the problems that these subgroups have caused. I wouldn't even be surprised if some of our newscasters are Freemasons themselves. They have to lie to the world every day. Andrea, does it talk about their influence in the mainstream in the book?
No, it just goes into the symbols.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Go into the symbols, because that's pretty much the next question.
All right. So what it says on the symbols is pretty much the symbols that it goes over is the number 33, black and white, the compass, and the pillars. So to start with the number 33 is significant in Masonic tradition because it is thought to stand for the highest level of enlightenment or spiritual achievement that can be attained within the fraternity. The highest degree in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the independent body of Freemasonry that is distinct from but closely related to the Blue Lodge, is the 33rd degree. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry is reportedly only achieved by a small percentage of Masons. Those who reach the 33rd degree are thought to be some of the most accomplished and elite members of the fraternity. They are believed to be the ones with the access to the fraternity's most private operations and true secrecy of the organization. According to some Masonic scholars, the number 33 is connected to both the number of vertebrae in the human spine and the number of years that Jesus Christ lived. It is also said to be the age at which Jesus was initiated into the mystery schools of his day, if you subscribe to the belief that Jesus even bothered with mystery schools. Some sects of Freemasonry believed he did. And then black and white. So black and white are frequently used as symbols in Freemasonry to denote the duality of human nature and the balance between good and evil, knowledge and ignorance, and light and darkness. The journey from darkness to light and the pursuit of knowledge and understanding are symbolized by the use of black and white in Masonic ritual and imagery. The black and white floors in every Masonic lodge is a significant symbol in Freemasonry. The four cardinal virtues, fortitude, prudence, temperance, and justice, are united in the pavement, which is a floor with black and white patterns and a central symbol represented by a blazing star or a compass and a square. The floor's black and white checkerboard pattern represents the duality of human nature and emphasizes the value of upholding harmony and balance in one's life. Additionally, it is said to stand for the need to work towards a higher state of consciousness and understanding, as well as the harmony between the material and spiritual worlds. The contrast between ignorance and knowledge, darkness and light, and the path from it are represented by the use of black and white. The idea behind joining the Masonic fraternity is that one should try to better oneself and move from ignorance to knowledge and understanding. And so the compass. The compass is a symbol used in Freemasonry to represent the individual Mason's spiritual journey and the pursuit of enlightenment. The compass is a symbol for the Mason's obligations to uphold certain moral and ethical standards, as well as the significance of self-control and self-regulation. The compass also symbolizes the teachings of Freemasonry, which are frequently used to denote the harmony between the material and spiritual facets of life. The Masonic ideals of brotherhood, the pursuit of knowledge, and enlightenment are represented by the compass. It is also a tool that operative Masons employ to create precise angles, draw circles, and is used in the Blue Lodge's ritualistic degree work. And then finally, the pillars. The twin pillars of Boaz and I don't even know how you pronounce that. Jachin. Jachin? 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 I don't know. Which stood at the porch of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, is described in the Bible are referenced in the Freemasonry. The pillars stand for the organization's strength and stability, as well as the value of harmony and symmetry in both the material and spiritual worlds. They are frequently seen as illustrating man's dual nature, with one pillar standing in for the material and the other for its spiritual. The two paths of the soul, one of which is the path of the light and the other of darkness, are said to be symbolized by the pillars. And there you have it.
Does it talk about any symbols that are kept hidden?
Not here, but that is covered in a different book that I have.
Do you have easy access to that book?
Both of it's in the links that I sent on Discord. The two books that I would recommend anyone who wants to get into Freemasonry go over is Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. That is kind of like the end-all be-all text for Freemasonry, and it was actually given to all Freemasons, I think, up until the 60s. I don't exactly know what changed then, but I know it's still a prominent book, and it has a lot of the foundational teachings of Freemasonry within it. And then the other book is The Deadly Deception, which is a book written by somebody who made it to the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, and then, if I'm not mistaken, I think found Jesus and decided to expose everything. So that's why that book was written. And in that book, you actually get a pretty detailed account of particularly the not so Christian, the ways that Freemasonry strays away from Christianity as you go through the ranks, and how it very quickly becomes something not Christian at all. It's really fascinating.
Yes, it is. How have Freemasons entrenched themselves into the Western world, and is this a global phenomena? So to answer the second part of that question first, yes, it is a global phenomena, because it has originated in Europe and expanded all over the place from there, because it was just very rich and powerful people who, created a brotherhood, and they were mostly men. And, when you have a society of rich and powerful men who are also brothers, it extends, because people begin to owe you favors. So how have they entrenched themselves in the Western world? Well, they entrenched themselves much different than, I would say, the Europeans did. Whereas the Europeans kind of started it, really got it off the ground. But here, it was fundamental to its founding. It was already here before here was even a thing. That's fascinating, to see a society and to see an organization be sprung up and really be prominent before this was even a country. It was still the 13 colonies. New York in 1768 really started to see its Freemason population start to grow, because that's when they really started coming over from England. And then they really started getting inoculated with the land and realized how free they really could be and how much money they could really have. And they were like, holy shit, this is so much better. Screw the British. And, we have to think about, this was really two separate factions of Freemasons trying to, really become a third, to have an established third, whereas the other one wanted to absorb the second one and really take control. We always must understand that the founding of the country was first and foremost, but second in the background, there was a hidden war of secret societies, and it was the Freemasons. You know, it was really before any of the occult mystery schools that we know now are prominent. It's I love the Revolutionary War times. That and the 1800s are just my two favorite periods throughout history. I love it. Sorry. Anybody want to add on to that?
Well, if you think about it, like,
Oh, two people time. Andrew,
let,
go first.
let her go. It's all right.
All right. Whoever was talking, go for it.
Hi, this is Caesar.
What's going
I
on?
just wanted to chime in on a couple things. What I noticed is Freemasonry likes to portray itself as one of their slogans to make men better, and so they like to portray themselves as a group of people. We all get together, we improve on our qualities as men, as husbands, and that's exactly what organized religion does as well. Regardless if you're a Mormon or I have family members that are Jehovah Witnesses still, they will talk about how they go door to door and they try to make people better than what they are using the Bible. So there's other ways of infiltrating your families, showing you one side of an organization or a brotherhood. And also, too, once you get into this organized religion, the women get involved regardless of their Mormon wives, Mormon sisters, Jehovah's Witness sisters, wives, and then you have Daughters of the Eastern Star and their other sister organizations. They're all linked through that Masonic pyramid. So there's a lots of ways that these Masons can infiltrate your life, even the lives of your family. There's also these groups. There's a very well-known public speaker. One of the guys that I work with, he mentioned him. And they have a group that has a symbol of the reef, which means the pantheon of gods. But when you go on to this man's website, he's a very influential public speaker, and he likes to talk about we are the elite. We are the elite. So when I started looking up his information, I noticed he had symbols and hand gestures that weren't okay. But these men also portray themselves as we are just a group of men trying to make you better, try to make you the top 1% of all men. So this had nothing to do with Masonry, but being able to identify these groups is one way, either through an organized religion or just gathering of a group of men that don't even talk about religion. Those things will infiltrate from time to time. And you may notice it and you may not notice it, but they're always there. I would like to add lastly, one symbol that I noticed that's kind of like become more popular with Masons lately is the honey bee symbol with the hive. I've noticed more and more that symbol is being used, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. That was a really awesome take. I appreciate that, Caesar. All right, Andrew, go for it.
About the Freemasons were here before even America was here or whatever. What you said was not too much of a stretch, because it's kind of weird how they were a secret society in the UK, came over here, and then, well, you know, they weren't so much of a secret. Yeah, they were a secret society, but then even to split off from that free UK Freemasons, they had to be a secret society within itself, you know? And it's just, and then they make themselves known. And then what we're kind of doing, they made us, we were trying to be outspoken, but then they censored us and made us look like a secret society, like evil. It's just kind of weird what they do and what happens. It's like you have to start out as a secret society or seem like a secret society. It's really weird.
Well, yeah, because you kind of have to be secret from the secret society. It gets. There are many levels to this when you're trying to break away and do your own thing.
Yeah, you have to start out as a secret society and then decide if you're going to keep being a secret or, go full force like George.
Well, you don't even necessarily have to. Well, because the beauty of Freemasonry is that it's a secret society even to the people who are within it. Unless you progress through the ranks, and not only progress through the ranks, but they see you to be, I guess you can say, worthy of going beyond 33 degrees, that if they don't see you as worthy of going beyond, you will only ever see the surface level rituals and the surface level execution of what it is to be a Freemason.
Yep.
Because I was trying to find it within this book, and so this is taken straight out of The Deadly Deception, which I mentioned earlier. And this, I was mistaken. This dude, he actually walked out during the 33rd degree ritual. He never actually completed becoming a 33rd degree Freemason. He walked out and he said he couldn't deal with it anymore. But something that he did note was that to become a 33rd degree, he had to fly to Washington, D.C. So that is where the ritual takes place. And he had to donate a substantial amount of money that he didn't even have on him. And because he was in the presence of other Masons, they were obligated to give him the money. And not necessarily obligated, but because they were also entrenched into it, that they were at literally the last step, that somebody loaned him the money and then gave him the fee so that he can continue with the ritual. But what I wanted to note was where he was interviewed by the Supreme Council. So he says, the first day was devoted to registration, briefings, and interviews. We were called into one of the offices, one at a time, and interviewed by 3 members of the Supreme Council. When my turn came, I was ushered into the office and seated. The very first question I was asked was, "Of what religion are you?" Not long before this, I would have answered something like, I believe the ancient mysteries, the old religion, and I believe in reincarnation. However, without thinking at all about how to answer, I found myself saying, I am a Christian. Then, to my surprise and theirs, I asked them, are you men born again? The men in charge quickly stopped me by saying, we are not here to talk about that. We are here to ask you questions. After they sent me back out, I sat down and thought about it. When the next man came out, I asked him, did they ask you if you are a Christian? He said, yes, they did. What did you tell them? I asked, and he replied, I told them, hell no, and I never intend to be. Then he said a strange thing to me. They said, I'm going higher. And then he left through a different door, looking pleased. See? They literally, they'll ask you the question to your face, and depending on how you answer will determine how much further you will go. And something, where to go? It said becoming, so this was like on the second day. So the second day was the day of the actual initiation, held in a theater-like meeting room. Those of us who were receiving the degree were seated, and the ceremony was exemplified, acted out in full costume before us, in the same way that we had performed the lesser degrees of the Scottish Rite all those years. The parts of the exemplification were played by men of the 33rd degree. The representative candidate was dressed in black trousers, barefooted, bareheaded, and draped in a long black robe that reminded me of a very long black raincoat. He had a black cable tow around his neck, but was not hoodwinked. During the initiation, he was led around the stage, conducted by 2 men with swords, as the degree was performed for us. The instructions and signs were given. Upon the altar were 4 holy books: the Bible, the Quran, the Book of the Law, and the Hindu scriptures. At one point, the candidate was told to kiss the book of your religion, and, representing us all, he leaned forward and did so. I remembered the first degree initiation when I was told to kiss the Bible, and the moment something came back full circle. It was the final such kiss to be this part of my life. And so it's like, oh, it's so creepy. And then after that, he drinks wine out of a human skull.
Oh God.
Yeah, it just keeps going. Yeah, this whole book lays it all out. It's fascinating, but I just thought it was really interesting how it was like, the dude that said, yeah, fuck no, I'll never be a Christian, is the one that's going to be shown the ways about it, showing just how, that this whole organization was never Christian. If the way that you truly progress is to denounce it, then yeah. And there's also an earlier chapters talking about how that there's weird fake dildo, or not fake dildo, but like dildo rituals and stuff that go on. Like, oh, this book is wild. And you can it's on archive.org, so you can read all of it for free. By Jim Shaw and Tom McKenney.
So after that enlightening bit, what can we say is the end game of Freemasonry, and is there any way of permanently altering their agenda? So I'm going to answer that last one first because it's the more loaded one. Yes and no. So, one might say, oh, I can just infiltrate it and, destroy it from the inside by being a ray of light and showing them that this is, a disgusting way of life. Not as easy as it sounds, because the moment you get into debt with a brother, that's when it clicks. That's when you realized, oh shit, they got me. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what I do. They got me. And I have to obey if I want to keep going. Otherwise, I might as well just end now. Because it's too old. It's too entrenched. The only way to destroy it is from within, but anybody who is within all owes somebody else a favor within. I know that was a little crazy with my wording there, but really thinking about it, the only way to destroy it is from within, but within that, you owe somebody inside something. You can't just say that you're gonna try to do better and have no debts. That's not how it works. They force you into having debts, and they force you into repaying those debts, whether you know it to be forced or not. That's the beauty of their tricks. So what's the end game? Oh my goodness, I am getting flooded, and I have a feeling I know who that's from. Yep. You are just ready and waiting on that, aren't you, bud? Goodness. All right. So what's the end game? I would say their end game wouldn't necessarily be total and full control of our information flow. I would say, just as Caesar said earlier, the betterment of man and creating a solid brotherhood. But the moment you get past 33, you start to realize that it's much more than that, and the people at the higher ups are just sick fucks, and they just gotta die. There's just no way around it. They're sick fucks. They gotta die, and when they die, the people that are on the lower ranks will have to rise up just by sheer default, and they will inherit the problems of the other ones, and it will be up to them to either do better or to do worse. And that's just the end of it. I mean, if a large 30, not, I don't want to say, if a large higher up gets axed and somebody, fills his place that was necessarily lower, but, was high up, but lower than him, so wasn't subject to as much information as that higher up was, but all of a sudden gets that, position solely based on where he is geographically. Not any other reason, solely based on where he is geographically. Because we also have to understand this is a global, network now. It's not different subgroups. It is a global network with subgroups. So they have to have regional people in charge. And if those people die off, get arrested, whatever ends up happening to them, someone has to replace them. That's in generally the same region. So it's a very interesting thing. It's almost like a very large corporation. Does anybody have any final thoughts on Freemasonry before we talk about space?
And where does the Freemasons fit into the New World Order?
The New World Order is a subgroup.
Okay.
It is not. They are Freemasons, but the New World Order is not Freemasons, if that makes sense. So they are part of it, but you can't fully attribute the New World Order to Freemasons. They just are members. And they just happen to be high-ranking members. And that's the beauty of splitting off this whole, aristocratic group with the lower ranks. As Andrea just kind of said, it's purely based off of the ideals. And, the moment that you cross that 33, it's a different world. It's a completely different world.
So what if one organization decided they wanted to be the leaders of the world and leave out the other one? How would that create a chaos between the two?
Anybody else want to answer that one? Because I could answer it very plainly, but I want somebody else to chime in.
Can you repeat the question, please?
She's basically asking, what if one subgroup basically says, I want full and total control over another one?
I think that's what we've been saying. It's through war, through countries, sex. I think that's exactly how they do it.
Yes and no.
Well, I don't know how they would do it in the same country like in America, but I would just say through wars.
I think somehow, some way that the taking over of the other group would have to fit into the ideals, the inherent ideals of that group's main ideology. They'd have to somehow frame that as but that's just my guess.
Does that answer your question, Hope?
So what Xenox was saying was, and if I understood, would it be through negotiation?
Negotiation and integration, depending upon what goals are already established. If they're coming in and saying, hey, we like what you're doing, but we want to do it better and help you guys out, why don't we merge and make a team and call it something else? Versus, hey, we hate you, we don't like what you're doing, we want your turf, we want to do better than you, get out.
I think that could be a legitimate reason too. It would just have to fit in the framework of their ideology.
I have a quick question. Would you consider the World Health Organization part of the Freemasons?
Again, I would say they are members, but I wouldn't say it's fully attributed. Like that's the big misnomer that I would say an absolute fuck ton of conspiracy theorists and people in the alternative space love to do is just put evil organization, it's a Freemason organization. No, that's not how it works. Freemasons are completely and utterly abstract. It is its own thing. They are just members. We have to understand that it's all just kind of tacked on. It's not integrated into the foundations. It's just tacked on. It's a pin on their suit. It's where their loyalties lie. It's not necessarily a Freemason organization, because we also have to understand it is still a very elusive organization. So if you have the eye to see it, you will see it. But if you don't, you will not. So not everybody is going to be a part of it.
I can't remember who said this, but I know this was a thought that I've heard elsewhere. But pretty much, if you wanted to get into any of the higher level, like you can say you wanted to become a part of the New World Order, you wanted to be one of their lackeys, you would have to become a 33rd degree Freemason. It's pretty much just like the baseline for doing the rest.
Well, that, and it shows your loyalty, and it's the tacked on
And your
type.
willingness to participate in
Exactly.
otherwise really fucking weird rituals.
Exactly. Yes. It is, yes, kind of weaved into the fundamentals, yes, but it's still an omniscient organization. There is no Freemason, high command type of organization. They are just in the background. All right. Are we ready to talk about space, or are we still want to talk about Freemasons for a minute?
Hi, I'd like to know about them and the banking, because I don't know if you heard that Dutch banker's testimony, and there certainly was rituals somewhat going on there.
You
And
know what?
I
I know it's funny you mention him, because I thought about him during the conversation. I don't know if he was if that was a Freemason ritual or if that was a full-on Illuminati ritual. I don't think he ever specified. I think he just was talking about the people and the places that he was going and the rituals that he was doing. Because there's one thing that I do know that they never fully do if they're in the code of the Freemason. If they're in the garb, if they're in the temples, I know they never fully do children. They allude to it, they hint at it, but the moment you go to places like Epstein Island, you go to Moloch, you go to special churches that are in very specific places in Europe, I know that, but going in Freemason lodges and doing that, I personally haven't found any accounts or notable historical events that had to do with that. It's always been at either Moloch, or sorry, not Moloch, Bohemian Grove, or Epstein Island, or different Orthodox Catholicism or Catholic churches. I've never heard it or seen it in Freemason temples and lodges myself. That is just me personally and the information that I have personally done. I could be very well wrong. That's just my personal opinion.
Are we talking about the children thing?
Yeah. Do you remember that video of the
end
Dutch...
of the Lucifer video?
Huh?
The end of the Lucifer video, the Freemason ritual?
No, the Dutch banker interview.
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Okay, so this video by far shook me to my core. This is the video that really made me go, holy fucking shit. And I saw it mid 2016, right at the height of the election. So that this was a very nexus point for me watching this video. But Basically, he described him going through the ranks within the Dutch bank and meeting certain people, going to parties. He never mentioned that he was a Freemason. He never mentioned that he did very specific rituals having to do with symbolism and all of that and brotherhoods. He never mentioned that, but he did mention that he got very high up in the Dutch banking sphere. He ended up meeting with some of the Rothschilds, getting really close with them, and it came to a point to where he started, I don't remember the country, but he ended up being tasked to go to a failing country and to take truckloads of money. I'm literally saying semi trucks full of money, so trillions of dollars, and shoveling it and burning it. Yes. And that's not all either. You know, he kept going on into it, and that was the big thing that made my head explode. I know he mentioned other things, but it's been several years since I've seen it, and it's been pretty scrubbed from the internet. So if you're able to find it, please put it in the Telegram. Please, for the love of God, I want to go back and watch that because it's been years, and it's good to go back and watch that stuff.
I've seen people post on Telegram. I'll see if I find it again.
Thank you. But he said, and he got to tears when he got to this point. He said, the moment they brought him to a room, they blindfolded him, they walked him in the corridor, they told him he was going to be doing just a basic thing to go into the ranks, and after this point, he would be fully set for the rest of his life. So he was guided into this room, he was blindfolded. The room was smelling very nice. It was big. It was open. There were people around. And they took the blindfold off. He looked around. Then he looked in front of him. He saw a camera pointed in his direction. And he looked at his feet and saw a child. Someone pointed at the child and told him that he needed to rape and kill the child when he was done. He then turned around and walked out of the church and never spoke to any of the people again. He burned his identity. He left the job. He did absolutely everything that he possibly could to excommunicate himself from the society. Because the moment he got into that state, he was confronted with the reality that this is no longer a banking situation. This is now a disgusting cesspool of satanic ritualism that is hell-bent on destroying the world.
Okay. That is disgusting.
Tell me about it.
The boy ritual thing at Dylan's video also. And then I saw something today that was really, really kind of weird that I haven't seen before. So that video, I'm not even going to go into it because it's disgusting, but you got to go back to Dylan's video. If you've seen that, there's another video that I saw, and they say that there's a nerve up inside of you in that spot where if you hit it, it's like an MK Ultra. It will make you do anything that the person wants you to do. It's really, really weird. And he said and then if it relates to that video too. And it's just, I don't understand the baby thing, but yeah, that nerve thing was kind of weird because it's just weird.
You also
I
get
don't
black
know.
eyes when that nerve is hit.
Panda eyes, yeah.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, I don't know.